The Princess of Wales made a triumphant return to public duties this weekend. It was her first official public appearance since Christmas Day. Kate revealed that she's still receiving treatment, including chemotherapy, for an unspecified form of cancer. That treatment is expected to continue for several months. But make no mistake, this was a huge moment for the royals in an otherwise historically wretched year. King Charles, aged 75, is still fighting cancer too. Conspiracy theories swirl for months about the health and whereabouts of Princess Catherine. Her badly edited Mother's Day photograph was an unmitigated PR disaster. But this weekend, against all odds, she was back at her glamorous best and the crowds loved it. So have the royals now turned a corner on a pretty dark chapter? Have the Katespiracies been banished for good? Or were some of them in fact correct? And has there ever been a more feeble attempt to overshadow a state occasion than Meghan Markle's decision to unveil a range of new dog biscuits on the very morning of Kate's return? But joining me now, our uncensored contributor and lawyer, Paula Rhone-Adrien, royal editor Sarah Hewson, royal historian and author Tessa Dunlop. But first, Fox News contributor Dr Marc Siegel across the pond in New York. Dr Marc, great to see you.
Hi, Piers. Good morning.
I want to talk to you first, because I know you've got a dash after we do this, about the health aspect. Because I was struck by what she said, the Princess of Wales. I'm making good progress, but as anyone going through chemotherapy will know, there are good days and bad days. On the bad days, you feel weak, when you are tired, and you have to give in to your body resting. But on the good days, when you feel stronger, you want to make the most of feeling well. My treatment is ongoing and will be for a few more months. On the days I feel well enough, it's a joy to engage with school life, spend personal time with things that give me energy and positivity, as well as starting to do a little work from home. And then she detailed she may attend some events and how grateful she was for everyone's support and understanding. Reading between the lines there, because there's no royal statement that's ever made, this accidental in its phraseology. What did you make of that?
Piers, I thought it was inspiratory, and I'll tell you for several reasons why. It was great to see her. I think she looked vital. I think it's her own hair, and I'll explain what that means medically in a minute. I thought her photography is back in form, and I think she sent a message of good cheer, positivity, and hope to the public, which the world badly needs right now. It's actually what the role of the royals is in the UK, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think everyone responded with good cheer to this. The medical part is, I've been saying from the beginning that I was suspicious that this could be a GI cancer that was found serendipitously if they were operating on her for inflammatory bowel disease. Why do I think that? Because she had complications after that surgery. And yes, you could find a colon cancer coincidentally during there in a pathology and decide to give 3 to 6 months of chemo. Here's the point. The kind of chemo you get then is milder than if it were gynecological cancer like ovarian, where you give something called Taxol, where you lose your hair and you get a lot sicker. Now, this is not confirmatory. And Piers, I wish they would come out and tell us which exact cancer it was, because that will help me and everyone else educate the public for surveillance, for screening, what to look out for. I think they should go all the way with this. But in the meantime, I felt it was an inspiratory appearance.
Yeah, I mean, I thought she looked pretty well, considering what she's been through. She looked, I have to say, pretty thin, like she'd been through a real ringer health-wise. And I was struck by that. She looked, quite gaunt. And I say that as someone who just wants her to be as healthy again as she can possibly be. But is that completely natural with any form of cancer at that kind of age?
Yeah, I think so. And that speaks to your earlier point that chemo hits hard no matter what kind it is. I'm downplaying it a bit here, and I shouldn't. She looks consistent with someone who has some type of underlying disease requiring that surgery, prolonged recovery from surgery, and then weeks and weeks of some kind of chemo. I think that that fit with, as you say, looking a little gaunt, a little bit pale. But again, she could have looked a lot sicker than that, and I admire the courage of her coming out.
What did you think about King Charles? He's also obviously going through extensive treatment for his cancer. How did you think he looked?
I think also, don't forget, he's a lot older. I mean, she's 42. I mean, I thought also he looked fairly good. My theory on King Charles, and again, I'd like to know exactly what he has. I don't think they do us enough of a service saying, well, we have cancer, but we're not going to tell you the kind. King Charles was found with a treatment for a benign prostatic hypertrophy, enlarged prostate. And usually when you find something serendipitously during that investigation, it's probably bladder cancer. Now, bladder, if he's getting the treatments that they instill into the bladder, is not as strong a treatment as what Princess Kate is getting. And, you know, he's been more public in his appearances than she has. Again, I don't have proof of any of this, but it's fitting a pattern. I think his cancer is not as severe as hers is, or was. Hers may be completely gone. But again, I think he's looking fairly good considering ongoing treatments.
Right. In America, if you had the president, for argument's sake, by comparison, and the president's daughter-in-law, both diagnosed with cancer, would they reveal what cancer it was? Would there be a clamour for them to do that? Would it be expected?
I mean, listen, Piers, you know, you're seeing our president being led off the stage by the former president, you know, like taking him by the hand. They're obviously not revealing what's going on with him now.
Right.
But yeah, we would be clamoring for it. We would be clamoring for full disclosure. It's a different situation, right? Because in the UK, they're not officially leading, but again, they're leading by example and they're leading by inspiration. But no, we have cover-ups here all the time on presidential health, and it doesn't do the public any good.
Yeah, I agree. Dr. Marc, great to see you. Thank you very much.
Great to see you, Piers. Thank you.
Sarah, let's start with you. It's interesting, isn't it? Because on one level, they've been more open, perhaps, than we would have been used to. They've revealed that both Charles and Kate have cancer and are receiving treatment. On the other level, because of all the conspiracy theories that have swirled around about both of them for the last 6 months or so, would it not just be easier to say these are the cancers they're battling? Why are they reluctant to do that?
I think while they're undergoing that treatment, they feel very strongly that they're entitled to a degree of medical privacy. And that's absolutely right. And
Is it right, though?
Palace,
Is it right?
I do think it's right.
If they want to be, they're both sides, they want to be role models to other people and inspire people. But how can you do that if you don't actually say what cancer you've got?
Well, one of the reasons is they don't then want people Googling and speculating about prognosis, for example. Yeah. And they want to be absolutely clear that they don't want that level of speculation.
But that's all going on.
It's not been ruled out. It's not been ruled out.
But that speculation is raging anyway because they're not saying.
But I don't think it would stop. It's much like the conspiracy theories. We've seen the Princess of Wales now. I don't necessarily think it means stop. Haters are going to hate. The conspiracy theories are going to go on. That is a whole industry in itself. But I think what we have had here is more transparency. And just look at the statement that was released by the Princess of Wales on Friday night. Deeply personal, very intimate, in fact, talking about those good days and those bad days, talking about the really hard times that she and William have been going through. Putting herself in the same shoes as others going through cancer, as those of you going through chemotherapy who've been through chemotherapy will know. And I think we have never seen that before. Yes, there's a point at which they want to stop, but actually she's giving a lot more than we might have expected.
Paula, I mean, look, it was great to see her. I mean, I just thought, great. She's back in a carriage looking like a princess. She looked fabulous. But she did look pretty thin. She looked to me like she'd been through a really hellish time, probably, and was putting a very brave face on it, which was extremely commendable. Can't be easy to be in her position as a mother, first off, as a wife, and then discover that, you have to go out on parade when you're still having a treatment. It's not easy.
And you're out on parade knowing that everything you do in terms of a glance, catching your breath, is going to be pored over, speculated on, pulled apart. And this is, remember, whilst you are with your children. And so, to continue along with Sarah's vein where she says, actually, they do expect and should have, at a basic minimum, some respect for their private and family life.
OK, but I'm not convinced that if you're going to tell people we've both got cancer and you are the king and the future queen, I actually think that given the way the modern world is, given social media, given the rampant speculation, which is raging anyway, and would. I accept your point. It would anyway. There were ridiculous conspiracy theories about her teeth I saw on social media, as if somehow this was a fake Kate. I mean, it's ridiculous. So there are nut jobs out there. But the general conspiracy theories, they're going to get more fueled by less information. I can't quite get my head around. If you want to make a real impact, then you need to be a little bit more specific to the cancer you've got, don't you?
No, you don't. The problem
well, if you've got breast cancer, it's not going to have any relevance to somebody who's got lung cancer. Is my point, right? I mean, there's a kind of, if you're more precise, you can be more, I think, more impactful to people who have exactly the same thing.
But that's because you and I are having a logical, calm and sensible conversation. You have to understand that Princess Kate and the royal family are not dealing with logical, sensible, calm people. They are dealing with people who are quite frankly crazy in their approach.
I'm not talking about
to
the
what's going on. But
part of the nut jobs.
But not even the nut
but
jobs.
part of the whack jobs to one side.
Yeah.
Let's ignore those.
We can
the ones
them
who look
to
at their
one
teeth
side,
and say it's not Kate.
and we can then say...
I'm talking about generally...
But generally speaking, we are talking about a mother who wants to not frighten her children.
Yeah.
And if she gives over too much information to the public, they will take that information, even with the best of intentions, and they will run rife with it.
And I don't think that they're making a firm decision, we're never going to talk about this. I just think they're not talking about it now.
I'm sure.
And when they're a bit further down the line, it may well be that she does decide to reveal exactly what's going on.
But I think we can stop the platitudes. Oh, this is so helpful for others suffering with cancer. We saw when King Charles came out and said he was having treatment for enlarged prostate. Very specific. I bet Piers, being a man of a certain age, banged in enlarged prostate.
Actually, that's exactly what I did.
There you are.
Because I genuinely thought, oh, that's what he's got. Yeah. That's interesting.
Do I know the symptoms? Do I know how to recognise them?
That to me is really helpful. But if he hadn't said any of that, I'm not sure how helpful
Yeah, with vague cancer, what do I do? Feel my armpit, my breast, up under. The point is, I think most of us, you'd have to be pretty made of stone not to, feel a great deal of sympathy with Kate and those people who've been derailed midlife with a massive health scare will feel empathy for her. But I don't think these sort of ideas that it's really useful that she's shoulder to shoulder with other cancer sufferers, that doesn't really stack up for me.
Well, that leads me to the second part of this. Allison Pearson wrote a column in the Daily Telegraph, which got a huge backlash because the headline was, "Our Fair Lady, Princess of Wales' selfless display was the tonic Britain needed. When lesser mortals would have stayed at home, Catherine proved the show goes on." Now that, as I say, a lot of backlash. A consultant clinical oncologist, Clive Peedle, wrote on X, "As a cancer specialist, I find this level of journalism absolutely appalling. It's hard to know where to begin, where the lack of understanding of how cancer might affect people is this poor. I'm more than happy to explain to Alison Pearson why this is so bad." Someone else posted, "Lesser mortals. I'm going through chemo, still working, parenting, doing the housework, making my tea. I'm sick, in pain, worried about finances, scared. I'm glad Kate felt well enough to attend, but Alison Pearson can F right off." I get that because it was I'll start with you, Tess, for a minute. It was a very clumsy phraseology, I thought. I don't think she probably meant it the way it's been taken, but to call people lesser mortals because they weren't able to be in
that, Piers? Why do you think she didn't mean it? This is I'm going to assume because of her job and how long she's been doing her job for, and sometimes the backlash she's received from other articles that she's written, that actually she's quite careful in terms of the language that she uses. So I'm going to have to question you on why you thought this was clumsy and that she didn't mean it.
Well, I don't know, is the honest answer. I'm giving her a little bit of license and a sense of, when she said lesser mortal, she probably just meant, isn't she courageous for doing what she's doing? But the implication is, if you're not out there doing what she was doing, then somehow you are a lesser person. That, I can understand why that's so offensive to people.
Two things. One is, Alison Pearson is a certain breed of individual in this country who I think genuinely believes that the monarchy is in some way near a god. That all that flummery, the bowing, the curtsy, that they do exist on a higher plane. I know that Kate was one day a commoner, but she's married into the royal family. And I think that Alison probably does have a kind of reverence that none of us, despite whatever we might do with our lives, could ever live up to simply by virtue of the fact she belongs to the House of Windsor. So yes, I do think she thinks everyone else relative to Kate probably is a lower mortal. But in relation to Kate delivered on Saturday and the way that some people with cancer aren't able to deliver, that's where these comparisons are dangerous. Kate is not... having the same cancer experience as the giant majority of us. Now, I'm not saying she should, because she's got to go out in front of a million lenses and look like Liza Doolittle.
No, but it's perfectly reasonable, isn't it, Sarah, to say that she will be getting absolute Rolls-Royce treatment.
No waiting times.
Yeah.
No battling to get the top treatments that might give you a better chance.
And also massive help at
access
home.
and huge help at home, and also access to the very best medical teams that they are. And I think they are very conscious of that and mindful of that. And it's a difficult one to balance, isn't it? When the King first returned to work, and they put out that statement that he wanted to show that it is possible to continue to work while having cancer. Actually, they were treading quite a fine line between, those who don't feel able to work, also those who have had to continue to work for financial reasons and haven't been able to take that time.
Let's be clear,
out.
99.9% of people who get cancer will have a completely different experience.
Absolutely.
Right? They're getting. It was once said to me that royals get the Rolls-Royce treatment when it comes to their health, and I think rightly. If you're going to have them, as you said, on a pedestal representing the country on the global stage, then I think they should get.
But what they don't have
treatment.
is the pressure that Kate has, because she is the supermodel of the royal family. There is no other. I mean, check out that balcony. It's fine, they're all doing their thing, but they're Ford Fiestas. And Kate is the Lamborghini, and she knows that she has to look a certain way and perform a certain way to live up to the expectation. She's a lightning rod of that family.
It was only when she fell sick, actually, Paula. It's only then that I think everyone thought, wow.
Yes.
Yeah. What if something happened to Kate?
Yes.
Right? You've already lost Harry and Meghan. They've gone. Right? You've got Charles, who's in his mid-70s. He's got cancer. The Kate part of this was a massive blow to people.
It was an absolute massive blow. And I don't think I'm being outrageous by suggesting it took us back to the loss of Princess Diana. Because
I agree.
We saw those three children and the stark reality that their mother was very, very ill. And I think that... the problem with the article is that actually what Allison has done is she's pitched Kate against other unwell people.
Yes, I agree.
That's just beyond crass.
I accept that.
But the three children is a really important point as to why she was there on Saturday as well, and determined to be there, because Prince William was on horseback. Otherwise, who was going to look after those children in the carriage? They wanted to show the Wales family out in force, first time since Christmas Day. Seeing her on that balcony, those balcony scenes are a snapshot in time. They're a moment in history, aren't they? We've had quite a few lately, of course. With
There was a very nice moment where
the...
Charles and her looked at each other. And that was a moment, because you got both of them going through the same thing.
And it's very deliberate. They were standing next to each other.
Yes.
They weren't last year. It was William standing next to his father. They were shoulder to shoulder and showing that bond.
But if you look at that balcony scene there, I mean, this is... it's fragile, right? The royal family now is fragile. There's no Prince Philip. There's no Queen, right? The Queen Mother has died in the last 20 years as well. You've now got the slimmed down royals, but we never really factored in that very, very quickly after they were slimmed down, two of the major players were going to get hit by cancer.
But also where I feel, and this is where I, even as a fellow woman, and even when we just sit here briefly in the public eye, the pressure on Kate. It was freezing on Saturday. We knew from the weather forecast it was going to be drafty, and yet she didn't cut herself any slack. There were no thermals underneath.
Well, let's all take a look at the picture. On Father's Day yesterday, they issued a picture, a very sweet picture. This is William looking out to sea in Norfolk with his three kids, George, Charlotte and Louis. And it was a message from them, their first one. It says, "We love you, Papa. Happy Father's Day." 2 red hearts signed GC and L. Now, whether they actually wrote those words, probably unlikely. But the image taken by Princess Kate, I think we can assume unedited. But a lovely picture, Sarah. And William, then released a picture of him and King Charles playing football when he was a kid, William, with his dad in a full suit. Happy Father's Day, Pa. Sweet messages, again, reaffirming, there's the picture of William and Charles. I mean, who wears a suit to play football with their son? But I like, it was all very good imagery at the weekend. It was it felt like a bounce back weekend and much needed for the Royals.
Yeah, and we got a real insight in behind the scenes, didn't we, in all of those images of family life. Seeing Louis on the balcony dancing, seeing Charlotte telling him to
By the way, he's going to be a little handful.
He's an absolute legend, though, isn't he?
I've got 4 kids, and you always know the ones who are going to be the handful. Yeah. You can just tell he's got about a little look in his eye.
Yeah.
Well, George has got William's sense of how to behave, right? Charlotte's got a little twinkle in her eye.
But
Louis,
she keeps those boys in check as well.
Louis is going to be a handful, I can tell you.
I want to go back to the picture of Charles in a suit, that so spoke to all Harry's narrative about his father. You know, he did his best, but he wasn't really fully in the picture. And there's Charles like, oh, God, really must I hang out with this toddler? I'd rather get back to Highgrove and sign a few documents for, I don't know.
It's not the most
organic hunt.
No, I read somewhere that he was on some sort of official duty.
Yeah, and then he'd gone out and his son's kicking a ball in the grounds
But that was
the palace. And it was
Let me tell you one thing. I'll tell you one thing
about
about that. So my brother-in-law was colonel in charge of training William and Harry at Santos Military Academy. So my sister, his wife, used to entertain all the royals when they came to watch William and Harry. It was several years this went on. And she saw them at first hand. And she said the one thing I was really struck by was how tactile Charles was with William and Harry. This is after Diana died. How tactile. Lots of hugging, lots of kissing. I just do not buy this narrative Harry wants us all to have about his father. He's some cold, aloof, distant guy.
And actually,
that
Harry
wasn't
himself
what
talked about his father stroking his face and sitting there because he was afraid of the dark until he'd gone to sleep.
Well, look, at this point of the debate, you know what's coming. We now have to reluctantly move to Montecito because...
We don't have to, though. It's interesting you want to, Piers, but we don't have to. You're king of the show.
I don't want to, but when you have major international celebrities like this guy, what's his name?
So major that you're having to find his name.
Nacho, the polo player, who's apparently massive in the polo world. But he shared images on the day this was all going down as a big reset for the royals of Meghan Markle's, he's a close friend of Harry from polo, Nacho Figueras, sharing images of jam and dog biscuits that he'd been sent by Meghan Markle from her new company. We're down to dog biscuits, Tessa. I mean, I honestly don't really care that much anymore about what these two do. But when they're flogging dog biscuits as the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, does a little part of you not go, oh dear, this is getting very, very tacky?
To me, as a man of considerable wealth, Piers, that you aren't aware that in Fortnum and Mason you can buy organic honey retailing at £20, peddled by the Duchess of Cornwall, otherwise known as Kate, who you revere. It's double standards to call out.
Where does the money go from that?
The money goes straight back into the coffers of the Duchy of Cornwall, incidentally.
Doesn't go to the royals.
I'm so sorry, but the Duchy of Cornwall belongs to the Duke of Cornwall, who voluntarily pays income tax on the profits made by the Duchy. They don't pay corporation tax. They don't pay capital gains. It's run on completely different rules. Incidentally, and they're given a massive state advert on Saturday. Oh, William, let's just Google him. Oh, and he sells jam. Harry and Meghan have to take every little moment they can, clutching at straws, because they are subject to the entire heft of the American tax system, and they don't have a state parade funded by us in which to tout their wares.
Do you think
I can't believe you're indignant.
Do you think when they left to find freedom, that it would constitute flogging dog biscuits?
Well, is there a Rizzler paper between organic honey and jam and dog? I'd say you're being doggist.
Well, there's one difference.
Frankly, you're being doggist.
There's one difference, which is that the other royals you've mentioned do their duty. They do their shift. They do hundreds
So does Harry. He rocked up for Invictus and his dad didn't have time to say well done.
That's a duty to his own brand.
No, duty to service. That's a charitable act.
Nothing to do with it. No, nothing to do with it.
Oh, Piers, you're so disingenuous. Do you know you're all right on Kate? You hold it together just, and then you disintegrate into some kind of slathering idiot, imbecile, dare I say, when it comes to the Sussexes.
I'm not slathering.
You don't judge by the same standards.
I just find them a constant embarrassment.
But then don't look.
That's all.
Don't click on Nacho's Instagram account.
Sarah, I'm not slathering. I just kind of think every single time we try and have something dignified here, we get these two doing something ridiculous, like flogging dog biscuits.
I just want you to know I'm waiting patiently for my turn.
Look, I'm not one for pitting these two women against each other, but I did think on Saturday the gulf between them was huge, and it did show just how life has changed for the Sussexes.
There you've
got Kate standing side by side with the King on the balcony, and then Meghan's friends are posting that she's sent them out some jam and some dog biscuits. Now, look, if you want to build a business, actually, I don't have any objection to them building a business and this lifestyle brand, because if it stops them then selling stories and trying to, monetize their gripes about the royal family, and she's genuinely building a business that she believes in and a lifestyle brand, that's great. One of those brands, I mean, you mentioned the honey. She's modelled it on Flamingo Estate, apparently. They sell honey from Julianne Moore, £200 for a pot of honey. Gwyneth Paltrow's Goop, again, one that she's looking at. Gwyneth said a message of support for Kate.
So why are you mocking them? Why are you saying Kate's up on a balcony?
Them, Tessa?
Because you said the Gulf was huge. So presumably you think Kate's wonderful up on a balcony next to the King as part of an institution we fund.
Well, the imagery is very different, isn't it? There's one there standing on a big
royals
public occasion.
and now Z-list royals, right?
But no, they're not royals, Harry and Meghan. That's precisely.
Oh, they are.
They are still royals.
They are. They're the
prince.
Duke and Duchess of
They're
Sussex.
not working.
As they remind us on all their paperwork, they're the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, members of the royal family. They just don't do any work for it.
If you really want to do your job as a democratic broadcaster, you would flag up that right in front of the balcony, a vast yellow presence, the Republican movement, somehow muscled their way between all the mass media cameras who are trying to work around them and the balcony, impossible to ignore. There is a large, increasingly large grain of sand in Britain that is expanding, that is anti-monarchy. You can't be anti-Harry and Meghan because we don't pay for them. They don't stand for anything. And that's a
Paula, you've been waiting very patient.
I have. I've tried to remain dignified, as if we're on the balcony. We need to remind ourselves of how this story came out. And the story came out on the basis that Meghan was promoting her wares, her brand, on the day of the Trooping of Colour. And of course, what we find out when we dig deeper is, once again, that simply wasn't true. It was a third party who had tried to...
It was Nacho who posted.
Exactly. And so, for me... And this is why I'm glad we still talk about Meghan, because for me, here we have another example, don't we, of how certain parts of the British press are attempting to attack Meghan Markle when actually she hasn't done anything
I think
wrong.
it's a bigger problem for Meghan Markle, which is actually people have just got a bit bored talking about it. Even I'm bored talking about it. I'm just not that interested. I think they're not that interesting anymore. When you're down to talking about dog biscuits, actually it's law of diminishing returns. When they were spray gunning the family, calling them a bunch of callous racists with no evidence, right? When they were doing that, it's all big news. Now they're flogging dog biscuits with their polo playmates.
But isn't that the right thing? That's my point, actually. If they're actually going to get on and run a really genuine business and make a living for themselves in California, rather than...
My same rule applies, which is take the titles away. Just do it as individual citizens.
But you've forgotten that the last time we met on this platform, we were talking about their tour in Africa and the fact that they'd absolutely kiboshed whatever the royal family was doing that week, because that was all we were talking about.
Yes.
So great. This week was Trooping the Colour, and it was all about Kate and the King, as it should be. And Meghan's friend was banging some dog biscuit on his Insta. The two aren't comparable. Why do we have to compare
That's my
them?
point about the Gulf. There you go.
Exactly.
They're not comparable.
You've literally proven Sarah's point
but they're
for
not
her.
comparable. One week.
I agree. We had the dog biscuit floggers in Montecito. We have the royal balcony watched by billions around the world.
I just wonder why we're referencing these dog biscuits that are going to be sold for hundreds of dollars. Why aren't we referencing the fact that here we have a woman who could have stayed at home, but she has instead decided to forge her own
she's
career.
At home. She does it
Well,
at
she
home.
can work from home, Piers.
But she has stayed at home at some point.
I do occasionally.
You said she hasn't stayed at home.
I'm
She's literally
saying
stayed at
that
home.
she's gone out to forge her own kit.
She hasn't gone
forge
anywhere.
her own career, and she's no longer relying on the state money, which is what you would have criticised her for relentlessly.
Like I say, you know what?
Celebrate the fact that she's been able to be successful.
I can't even get that word up.
It could be dog biscuits.
I think I've reached
waste disposal bins.
I've reached the point now where I can't be bothered.
Do you know,
and that's the worst thing for them.
I'll remind you of that.
They're like so irrelevant. I can't, honestly, I haven't got the energy anymore.
I'm just going to say I'm looking for a new job because Piers is never going to talk. Which is the camera? Piers is never going to talk about Meghan and Harry again, and my services won't be required. It's been really enjoyable.
No, it'll be, but they'll always be number 4 or 5 on the topic list now, I think.
Well, they weren't the last time we met. They weren't. You've got a very short memory. I'm going to remind you of this.
Well, if they try and plan rival tours at the same time as the Royals.
It wasn't a rival tour, Piers. We discussed that.
Oh,
it wasn't a rival tour. It was an invitation that they accepted.
It's a crowded diary. The royal family are busy every week. There's always some Duchess of Edinburgh.
Well, Sarah, so you don't want to become between two women.
I mean, why am I positioned right here?
There's a reason for that.
All right. You know what? I've run out of steam on this. But thank you all very much. Appreciate it.